You in this battle, man, I'll soon be dead. I'll glue your face to my dick so I can fuck with your head. I got metaphors coming through my pores. You probably never been in a battle before, so I hope you realize your mistake. There ain't no party, got some candles, this will be a piece of cake.
Folks, welcome to the Before Hours podcast, internet radio phenomenon hosted by an occasional morning person. I ask the most interesting people I know about their sleep, their routine, life, love, stress, and setbacks. If you want to talk to me, you may do so in one of two ways. If you're watching on YouTube, you could comment on this video. I would love if you did that. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, I no longer sell feet pics, but I could be reached on Instagram, Bobby Sheen, LOL, because you know I bring the laughter. Now, I just did his podcast. He's a great comedian, a great man, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, quite the entertainer. Welcome to the podcast, Brennan Tasseff. How you doing, Brennan?
What's up, man?
What's going on, big dog?
Nothing. What's up with you, dude?
I mean, we'll do plugs at the end, but I just did your podcast.
Yes.
And you also have a intro that's very long. It says a lot of things.
Yes.
And as I sat in your living room listening to you do this, I was like, this is my brother from another mother and father. We're not related at all. But
no. But yeah, I do for my podcast, which we'll plug at the end, but you know.
We'll also plug right now. Fuck it. You know what? Mask off. Let's do plugs at the beginning and the end. The end.
To your point, I have a podcast, Ex Drinking Buddy, where I have guests on to talk about their best and worst drinking, drug, party, and getting in trouble stories. But I also have because an intro has to be an intro. And so many of our friends are like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast where it's just me and a buddy riffing. And I go, you know, there's super famous comics that do that. Nobody gives a shit. You have to have a theme.
Everybody's like, what if I was Cumtown? But Cumtown already happened.
Yeah, it's already a thing. So for podcasts that have a theme to them, such as yours or mine, there has to be an intro. Mm-hmm. You have to tell everybody what they're listening to. And it's good for the guests too, because then they're like, oh, this is what we're going to be talking about. Mm-hmm. And I have a problem where I'm riffing Randy, as you put it. And sometimes I get off on little tangents, but I always try to stick to the main theme of the show.
Dude, I listened back to our episode, which was so great because you're a great host and your guest was fantastic. And
one of the best, some say. Some, not many, but some.
Yeah. At least one person would say that about the guest. Now, is it himself? Possibly.
Maybe.
But yeah, dude, that was Tangent City. I love that.
Yeah, and that's a problem that I have is as a host, I'm very good about getting us back on track. Mm-hmm. But my problem is I will derail constantly. And then so that's why I have some episodes where I'll be 45 minutes in and I'll be like, oh, we haven't even touched on the theme. We've talked about comedy and social media and all this stuff for 45 minutes.
I mean, you're derailing more than Amtrak, huh?
Hey!
RIP to all the people that passed away. But I had a great time. We talked about, because we're both sober Samuels, right?
Yes.
So I talked about the first drug I ever did, which was weirdly Vicodin.
Yeah.
And
that clip is coming out. Don't worry.
Oh, the Vicodin clip, dude. You know what part of it was? Part of me, because I mean, you guys are going to go listen to the podcast, but I'll do the cliff notes right now. When I was 14, the first drug I ever did was Vicodin because my buddy broke his arms and had not just one arm, not
I was about to be like, wait a second.
And he had inattentive parents. What a combination, dude.
Hey!
A broken bone and inattentive parents. You see where this is going. He sold me some of his Vicodin. And because I'm such an Eminem stan, I'm wearing the Gilbert's Lodge t-shirt right now, or sweatshirt rather. I was like, oh, I'm going to take Vicodin like Slim.
Yeah.
I was literally behaving like Stan. I'm like, I'm going to be like the fictional character, Slim Shady, and take Vicodin. You know,
it's
I just got itchy and nothing happened.
Yeah, you get real itchy. I got warm the first time. I was changing my sister's light bulb in her car, and the little light bulb exploded in my face. So I went to the hospital, and because I was always a drink, I started drinking late at 18, but I was always a drinker. I always stayed away from drugs because I played college sports and stuff. So it was one of those things where it's don't do this. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the hospital, and I don't know if your listeners know this, but the eye is one of the most sensitive parts of your body. Okay. So they give you not hydrocodone, they give you Oxycontins if you get something in your eye. And they gave me 8 of them. And I took 4 in the first hour because I was like, this is awesome.
That's fucking good.
And I was like, oh, this is bad. But
Oxycontin, Xanax bars, Percocets, and Loratep.
Yeah, let's go, man. And that was the first time I ever did really hard drugs. Later on, I would snort heroin and stuff like that, but that was the first time I ever did hard drugs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you hurt your eye in a way that they were like, let's give him pill heroin.
Well, because they didn't know. They were just I was a 19-year-old kid. I was visiting I was maybe 20. I was back home from college. and I'm good with my hands. You know what I mean? And so my twin sister was like, I can't figure out how to change this headlight. I'm not that good though, because I was trying to like rip the head, because it was a Jetta. So I'd never worked on a German car. And I was like, oh, maybe you just pop it out. And I kept pulling and pulling, and then it just exploded in my face.
Yeah.
And they were like, went to the hospital, and they're like, oh my God, your eye, that's so terrible. And this is back 15 years ago. So Florida was still a pill mill state. So they were just handing out Oxycontin for stuff. And they gave it to me, and I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
No wonder people get addicted to this.
I've never done Oxy before. What's it like?
It's just basically the same thing as like Vicodin, but a lot strong. Like, so you get itchy, but you feel like a warm, like almost like comfort through your whole body. And all the pain goes away. Like, I think it numbs the receptors or something. I don't know exactly. It does magical things. But the good news is I've very rarely had health insurance. So it's not like at the time I was still on my parents' health insurance because I was only like 20, but I didn't have the wherewithal to like go to a doctor to be like, I need more of these. It was one of those things where, and I wonder if you have the same experience with my addiction. I can get very addicted to things like comedy, like we were talking about on my show, video games and stuff. Sometimes I'll get sucked in. But with drinking, it was the one thing where it was like, no, this is what I do. But pills, cocaine, like I've smoked crack before. Like none of that was like as extreme as drinking was for me. So when I didn't have the wherewithal to get more pills, I was just kind of like, oh, I guess that was fun, but I don't do that anymore. And I don't know, because I know you've been sober for a long time. So I don't know if you've had a similar kind of one thing where you're like, oh, this is the thing, and everything else you can kind of take or leave.
I agree that alcohol was the thing. But I think a lot of that was I didn't have the patience to do the networking.
Yeah, that's true.
That is necessary to doing illegal drugs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a hard part about it, is like finding people. And then if you find a guy, if the guy's not around, you're like, well, what the fuck? What is happening?
Yeah.
So that is a very good point. Yeah, alcohol was just so easily accessible, and still is so easily accessible, that it was just kind of like, oh no, I'll just go to the store.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, that's why I will entertain the argument, like the libertarian argument, where it's just like decriminalize drugs. I hear you, the war on drugs, the drugs won, as the joke goes, right? But because they're like, who's going to do heroin once it's legal? I'm like, I probably would have.
Yeah. Well, so the spider web that is the legalization of drugs, because as someone who, identifies mainly as a libertarian, I completely entertain that argument where I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. The problem is they'll never do it because there's too much money. My brother is a scientist, I don't know if you ever saw the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, but that's my brother, super genius, like got a lot of mental issues just like I do, but like super smart, like the smartest person in every room. Like he used to go to his PhD classes hammered and get like, and then they made him like a TA. They're like, you're so good at this. But I say that to say he went to France to work for a nonprofit after college to try and help cure prostate cancer. Because statistically speaking, every man will get prostate cancer. It's just a matter of how long you live. And when I remember talking to him one day, and he goes, I had to go to France. It's so hard in America because there's so much money involved with it, that it just like everyone wants their piece. So it makes things more difficult. Now to transition that into drugs, you can't get rid of the DEA. That's an entire branch of the government. If you legalize all drugs, all these people are out of a job. Not to mention all the pharmaceutical companies that prescribe painkillers. If heroin's legal, they're the ones who pay for the campaigns. Like you're not. So it becomes like this whole argument of like ideals, where people are like, this should be legal. It's a free country. Like we should be able to do this if you want to, versus like, no, just like we talked about on my show. And I know you are very well aware of, because you like history, you just follow the money. Like it's not going to happen because there's so much money involved. It took us how long to legalize weed?
Yeah.
And that's the least profitable drug.
Dude, it is honestly, it's funny. I think about what's going to make me seem old when I am old.
Yeah.
I always think of being like, well, I'm older than the internet, right?
Yep.
Older than popular use of the internet. And the other one is like, oh, I remember when pot was illegal.
It was a big deal. And it was like one of those things where now everyone just, like I walked outside of my gym the other day, and this guy that goes every day was smoking. And I was like, oh, dude, you're here all the time. I didn't know you smoked cigarettes. And full disclosure, I smoke cigarettes, but that's because I'm fucking cool. And he was like, no, this, and he like showed it to me. And I go, oh, that's weed. Like just casually smoke. And like you said, like 15 years ago, everyone did it in like their cars or their basements or their attics, like away from everybody. And now he's just on the street before he goes into work. It's his pre-workout. And I was like, what is happening?
I remember one time when I was with my friends and I was like 14 or 15 and we were like, so I'm from a valley, so we're surrounded by woods. So you always went into the woods to smoke, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there were like two cops, like we could see them, and it looked like they were walking right towards us. I'm like, oh, they could see us. They're coming to talk to us. They know we're kids smoking pot in the woods.
Yeah.
And my buddy, we somehow got our hands on a lot of weed, like a handful of weed, right?
That's a
Which
lot.
for a teenager,
Yeah.
for anybody. And my buddy swallows
No.
all of it. He swallows all of this weed. At art, we were all like, because we don't understand that he would probably just be like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Right? We all think we're going to be in federal
also you
county
could
in the
just-
ass prison.
You could just throw it. It's the woods.
Yeah, but I don't. One of us, whoever had the idea that my one friend should eat the weed, probably saw too many movies, right?
Yeah.
Here's the kicker, Brennan. They didn't see us. They were walking somewhere else. Suck, dude. And my buddy has like all the. He probably shit out. I don't know how well you could digest weed. He probably just shit out little green nuggets.
Yeah, probably,
Next
because
day.
your body can only absorb so much of everything. That's why, like, when I take too many supplements in the morning, like if I skip my night pills and I take them in the morning, my pee is like yellow, like bright green or bright yellow. Like it's like your body only absorbs so much. So he's probably shitting out full ounces, dude, like chunks.
But you were a good boy. You didn't really start doing stuff until you were an adult.
Yeah, it was interesting because long story short, the only person I'll throw under the bus is my ex stepdad was a horrific alcoholic, like real bad. And so like my parents and like my family could get after it. Like they partied and stuff, but it was never as bad as then when I saw like what people were capable of. Because my parents get divorced when I'm 12 and then my ex stepdad enters the picture. And when I'm 12, I'm like a loner. Like I'm still to this day very much a loner kind of guy. So I'm just playing video games and stuff. I don't even really think about it. And then it kind of coincided, like as people were getting into high school, me and my twin sister and my older brother who had already graduated high school. Like I was like, oh, this is the time. Like if you go on a timeline based on movies, this is when people start to drink. But then I saw like what he was capable of when he would drink. And I was like, oh, this is fucking poison. Like this is terrible. And that kind of pushed me away from alcohol, some other stuff too. But that was the main driver where it's like, I don't ever want to do this. Like, this is toxic. And then, yeah, because I graduated high school at 17. So I was 17, about to be 18. And it was my senior year of high school. And my twin sister was having like a little get together at the house because her, my older sister, my older brother, they were popular kids. They all had friends. They would drink on occasion. And I just was like, no, this is the devil. And she was having people over and she was like, hey, do you want to come to this little get together we're having? And that shocked me because me and my twin sister were never close until that moment. And we've been inseparable ever since, in a sense. But I went and I was like a little nervous because I was like, I've never done this before, but I wanted to look cool. So I shot a 99 bananas and it hit me. And I was like, oh, I'm not anxious anymore. I'm not depressed. I'm wearing a sweatshirt now, but for the audience, I was like the kind of kid who would like cut myself and I'd throw up all the time because of my anxiety. So it's like, it was bad. It's not like, it always is funny to me when people are like, I'm anxious too. I don't like to fly. And I go, we're not the same. My anxiety is like, I miss my train. I'm going to get fired because I'm going to be late. I'm not going to be able to pay rent. I'm going to be homeless. Like that's how my brain works. Not like, oh, I don't like being 30,000 feet in the air. Yeah, and I remember my anxiety almost immediately was gone. And because I had no tolerance. And I was like, this is awesome. Had my first like diet threesome that night. 2 girls came over that I knew from high school because, well, I didn't have a ton of friends. So I called these 2 girls I called one girl that I knew. And I was like, hey, we're having a party. And, in high school, if you're like, there's booze and it's a comfortable house, come over, no parents. Like people will come over, and she came over with her friend, and I remember we all just got drunk and like we all made out. I say diet, like we just made out and stuff, but still, as a 17-year-old kid who'd never even touched a boob at that point, I was like, what's happening? So from that moment on, I was like, let's party. And that was it. So I didn't do the high school thing where I'd go to like house parties and stuff, but I did. Once I got in it, I was like, we're doing it.
I mean, if your introduction to alcohol is two things, you realize there is a quote unquote cure for your anxiety,
Yep.
and you get to kiss two chicks at the same time. Brother, I get it.
Dude. And then it's
two chicks at the same time.
it's a weird kind of happenstance. I played Division I college football, but I didn't go. It's a long story, but long story short, I ended up taking the first semester, so after the summer, when everyone goes away, I like going into the summer was like, I'm not staying with my parents anymore. You know, I already talked about my ex-stepdad who was still in the picture at the time. So I obviously wasn't living with my mom. And at the time, now we have a great relationship, my father and I, but at the time I was like, yeah, I'm moving out of here too. So I was the only kid after graduating high school who had his own place. Now I want the listeners to think back on this. When everyone originally graduates high school, everyone kind of stays at home for that summer and then goes away to college, mainly to live in dorms. Or if you stay at home and you don't go to college, you end up living at home for a little while. I was the only person, like 17, just turning 18, who had his own place. So there was no more my parents aren't home. There was none of that. So that whole summer we partied at that apartment. When everyone went off to college, whenever they would come back, we partied at that apartment. Like I was now the guy who had the spot. So it went from this is poison, how could you do this, to me drinking almost every single night. But I was getting ready to leave to go play college football that next summer. So that was like 6 months. And then 6 months before I left, I really buckled down with my training and everything. But it's easy to say I was like letting it rip right off the bat.
Dude, as a 34-year-old man, you describing this, I'm like, that sounds like so much fun.
It was so much fun, dude.
Fun.
Because nobody has you always have to like, and a lot of the times, especially in Florida where I'm from, the parents are like, you know, the cool parents from like Mean Girls and stuff. So they'd be like, oh, you can have your friends over and drink, but you can't really like go if parents are in the house. So like it got debaucherous. It got out of control. Like we would play war with dice and we would do shots. So whoever had the lowest number would do like rip a shot and then you'd go again right away. Like it was prime alcohol poisoning. And I don't say all this to romanticize it. Like it was very dangerous. And my last drunk, I literally woke up in the hospital being told I should have been dead. So I understand the evils that come with alcohol. That's why I've been sober for coming up on 7 years. But at the time, this is like varsity. Like they make movies about this shit. They romanticize this like crazy. I mean, Friday Night Lights was a huge show. And the main plot point to that show was having parties, like Dylan Panthers getting drunk. And, you know, it was a ton of fun. And then when I got to college, I was playing football. I was bullied a lot in high school, relentlessly. That also led to a lot of the anxiety. And like I said, I was a loner. So I did something that a lot of people talk about, but very few people do. When I got to college, I said, I'm done with it. I'm not going to get bullied anymore. I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm a Division I athlete. Like I'm sick and tired of hating my life every fucking day. And the only respite I get is drinking. And the only reason people come over is not because they're my friends. It's because I'm the only one with a place. And I kind of came to that realization. And so again, this is another core memory. I was in an elevator. I had met my roommate. He was very gregarious. So he introduced me to a bunch of people. One was a girl. She has since passed away. You know, heroin sucks. But she was like, hey, you should come up to my dorm room so we can go get a bottle of like Svedka or something. So we're in the elevator going up to her dorm room. And I remember a bunch of scholarship, because I was only a partial scholarship, a bunch of like second-year scholarship football players got on the elevator. And they were like, what are you doing in this elevator? You don't live here. Because they knew I didn't live. It was the summer semester. They knew I didn't live there. And I remember that moment being like, this is the moment. Like Starship Troopers, this is the moment. This is when it turns. And I turned and I said, oh, I'm just visiting with my friend. I'm actually here to play football. And one of them went, man, you don't play football. And this is when Bro was real popular. I went, bro, you really think I don't play football? And they're like, all right, you cool, man. And I was like, it worked. It fucking worked. I could have like cowered in the corner, but I didn't. I stood up and I was like, no, let's just push back a little bit. And ever since then, I was like the guy. Like it was like the best time ever.
I like that story because I was anticipating that it might be you overreacting.
No,
Like,
no, that didn't
This
happen
guy
till
doesn't play
later.
football, and you're like, shut the fuck up! I do play football. I will fucking kill you.
That actually did happen later. That's how I got the scar on my forehead.
Ooh.
Yeah, you want to talk about lows? Yeah, so from then on, I was like, because I played fullback, which is a very intense position for anyone who doesn't know. It's a protector. You basically are blocking for the running back. Shout out Alfred Morris, played in the league for 10 years. That was the running back. But like, you're a protector of sorts. So like, I get very like, so long story short, it was a great time, but you have to be a little crazy because you don't ever really get the ball. Your main objective is to block. You have to be big and strong, not so much fast. And so it's a thankless position pretty much. So you have to be a little nuts to play it. And I was the guy who would like hit his head on the walls and put dents in them. And like before games, I'd smash my helmet into my bare head and like, which is why I ended up stop playing. Cause I got so many concussions that they were like, you can't play anymore. So fast forward 2 years I play. And then I get my eighth reported concussion during practice one day. And they were like, hey man, you can still keep your partial scholarships. I was a preferred walk-on. So they're like, we'll still pay for your books and your meal plan through your college career. But this is when the NFL was being sued by the Players Association. The movie Concussion with Will Smith had just come out. People were dying. Junior Seau killed himself. A bunch of other players were dying from either suicide or a bunch of different causes from head trauma. And so every school, Division I down to Division III and NAIA, every school was like, hey, if they get a certain number of concussions, they cannot play anymore. So that's what happened. And they told me I couldn't play. And that's when things started to spark. Because as an alcoholic, I need structure. So I would still get after it, but it was 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. Because Thursday was always a walkthrough at practice and Mondays we always had off. So Wednesdays and Sundays were the nights I'd get after it. But now I could just do this every night. And that's when things got crazy. And I remember I was like, I'm going to try to come back. I'm going to get healthy and I'm going to try to come back. But we were having a party going into what would be my junior fall semester. And so it was the end of summer. We're having this big party before the fall semester starts. Technically, I'm not really on the team anymore. Like I am, but I'm not. And I remember I got hammered and I got into a wrestling match with a defensive player, which it went from yelling to wrestling to a full-blown fight. And I remember I ripped his shirt and it was one of those nice Mark Echo shirts, all bedazzled and stuff. And he slapped me in the face and said, this shirt cost me $20. You better give me the money for this shirt. And I should have been like, yeah, my bad, dude. But I was like, fuck you and your fucking shirt. So then he slapped me in the face and said, bitch, give me my money. And I had one of those bro-y pocket knives that people carry. And I whipped it out and I said, I got your money right here. And so you want to talk about overreacting?
Yikes. You did win that interaction.
Yeah, I did. All my teammates grabbed me. They're like, calm down. And I took the knife and I put it to my forehead and I went, I'll fucking kill you.
Oh.
Yeah.
God damn, Brendan. That's psychotic.
Yeah, that's how I got that. It's still there.
Dude, I was wondering how the story ends with you getting a scar.
Yeah,
and you're like, and then I did it to prove a point.
Yeah, and then he walked away and he was like, Tass, if you're fucking crazy. And I was like, I think I made my point. But everyone... I mean, I have it as a bit that this is a story I tell on stage sometimes, but this is 100% true. Mm-hmm. I ended up like cutting my whole face. Like in the bit, I have one cut, but the actual story, I had 22. I counted them the next day. I had 22 marks on my face. There's two really bad ones right here, which is why I have a beard now. You can't see them. Right. And then the one on the forehead. Those were probably the three worst. And I went to practice the next day. And so I guess this was the year before my concussion because I was still playing because I went to practice the next day. And the running backs coach came up to me and he said, Tasseff, what the fuck happened to your face? And I said, oh, I got drunk and fell into a bush. And 100% true story. He came up to me a little bit closer and he said to me, we actually know what happened. We heard from your other teammates. And he leaned in real close and whispered, we need that kind of intensity on this team. That is 100%. People try to call me on it all the time. And I'm like, I played Division I football in Florida. What do you think? You think he didn't do that? And then, so yes, I was mistaken. It was my second year. So like I had built up a reputation as like the fun drinking guy, But I still was like in this mindset of like, don't get punked, because it was going into that year. A couple of guys tried to get me kicked off the team. A couple of fucking nobodies tried to get me kicked off the team. A bunch of people were like stoked about it. Needless to say, I didn't really have any interactions with the defensive players for the rest of the year. And then it was going into the next year that I got my 8th concussion and I couldn't play anymore. But yeah, it was, I wanted to get my timeline right because I haven't told that story in a minute, but it was definitely one of those things where it was like, I am that guy. Like I'd done it as a persona, a defense mechanism, and it became me. I had an alter ego when I drank with the football. My nickname was Brennan Tasseff because they were like, you don't want to see Brandon. And that continued actually for years. Once I stopped playing football, my alcoholism got really bad. I would always get super drunk and be the aggro douchebag that I rail against now. That because it was like a persona, like this machismo persona. Because I was raised by women. I'm the most effeminate person I really know. And that's including a lot of like comedians that we know that are LGBTQA plus. Like I'm even more effeminate than some of them. And it was because that's just, I was raised around, like I've done drag shows. I love doing makeup. You told me we were going to be on camera. Dude, I had the things under my eyes. I was like I am very much like conscious of that part of me. But I would have this persona of like, I'm going to fuck shit up, which actually benefited me later on getting arrested and being incarcerated and stuff, because I couldn't be my natural self. Like oh my God, like silly Billy. Like you have to be like, no, I have to be Brennan Tasseff in here. I have to be a psycho.
Walk me through what being, tell me about being incarcerated.
So I talk about this a lot in my one-man show, which is also called X Drinking Buddy. You can get it on YouTube. A comics look at life, near death, recovery, and redemption. But it's an interesting thing. So the first time I got it, I'll give you the abridged version because I've been arrested 8 times. So the first time,
once for every concussion.
Hey, I didn't even I didn't even put that together. That is interesting. The first couple times. So this is what I say. I say getting put in handcuffs is being arrested. So technically I've been arrested 8 times in my weird logic. 6 times I've been booked. 4 times I've actually had to stay longer than 24 hours. And 1 time I stayed for 4.5 months. So the first couple times I had gotten arrested, one was at FAU. Shout out, go Owls. This was after I stopped playing football, but I was pre-law, so I thought I knew everything. And I was just drinking by myself and just playing the TV way too loud. And the FAU police came. And our campus police aren't like campus police. They're Boca Raton police officers. We contract out to the local PD. So they're real cops. So they don't take shit. So that was the first time I got arrested. They just kept me in a holding cell for like 8 hours, a drunk tank, and then let me go. And that wasn't a big deal. But the first time when I got my first DUI at 21, that is a very sobering thing because they arrest you, they impound your car, and you're going to the jail. Like the first couple of times it was like holding cells and I talked my way out of it. A lot of white privilege, I'm sure, has to do with it. And a lot of times, especially on campus, like I did play college football. Like I knew some of the cops because they were the same cops that would like do the security for the team. So I got out of it a lot of times. But the first DUI was sobering because it was one of those things where I have no safety net. I don't really talk to my parents. I don't really have like friends like that. Like we're all in college. I don't have anyone to call to bail me out. And it's a very scary thing because I'm like, oh, I wanted to go to law school. Like I had plans, and now you see the lights behind you, you see the cops coming up, and you run through all these scenarios in your head and you're like, oh, this is over. All of it. It's over. And I didn't realize a DUI, especially in Florida, is like a thing that they do constantly. So they put you in jail. They do something called ROR, which is released on your own recognizance. Basically, they're just like, show up for this court date. And so I did all that. And then I didn't get arrested again for a little while because I was on probation for the DUI. But then when I moved back home, I was just getting in trouble constantly. There was a couple of close calls where I should have been arrested, but I ran from the cops and got away. But then when I left South Florida with 6 months left on my probation, and you're not allowed to do that. You're supposed to serve out your probation time.
If anyone's thinking of doing that,
don't. It's county to county. So I leave.
Did you know you weren't supposed to do that?
Yes, I
Oh,
was
okay.
told very specifically by my probation officer not to leave. I was told if you're going to leave, because I told her, I go, listen, I'm done with college. I finished college by the skin of my teeth. I was like, I can't afford to stay in South Florida anymore without student loans, which hindsight now being 36, that was a fucking terrible idea to be taking out loans to pay rent and stuff because now I'm underwater with these loans. But that's another thing. So she said, listen, fill out all this paperwork. We'll get you mail-in probation. So you'll see a probation officer in the county you're moving to, but you'll still like send us a check every month. Like you'll still technically report to South Florida. And I said, okay, no problem, bet. And I'm still drinking heavily at the time. I show up in the U-Haul with my buddy Lenny. Shout out Lenny, my old roommate. Show up in the U-Haul, walk into the probation officer, hand her all the paperwork. And she goes, oh, you filled out this section wrong. You're going to need to go in front of the judge to ask him specifically. And I said, okay, no problem. Set it up. Got in the U-Haul, drove away. And I was like, fuck this. There's no consequences in life. And yeah. So fast forward 3 years, my drinking gets out of control. I go to the hospital 2 more times in that span, getting fired from jobs like crazy. And fast forward, I end up going to rehab in 2013. I go to rehab back in Florida. Driving to an AA meeting. After rehab, I'm living in a halfway house, driving to an AA meeting. We get pulled over for not wearing our seatbelts. Guess what they keep a record of? Warrants.
Yeah.
I had a warrant out for my arrest for skipping town on probation. So then I say all that to say, by this time, I've gotten used to this situation. So it's very much like, all right, like bag them and tag them, book it. Let's go. Come on, take me in. I was still scared though, because it was only the fourth time I had like actually gotten arrested. But I remember the cop was like, hey, do you have anybody you need to call? So I called my mom, told her what was happening. I called the halfway house owner, told him what was happening. And I called my job and I told them what was happening. And everyone, because I went to rehab on my own accord. I like wasn't court ordered. Like I was like, I have a problem. And so I did all that. So the cop was kind of a little more lenient with me because he saw it was a violation of probation on a DUI. He saw that I'd cleaned up my life. I was on my way to a fucking AA meeting when they got me. So he let me make those calls and everyone was cool. Everyone wrote in as character witnesses. Everyone, like my halfway house owner, my sponsor, my job, like everyone spoke really highly of me. And I got in front of the judge and I remember the probation office representative was like, 9 months is what we recommend. 1 for every violation of probation. So I had 6 for missing the 6 months. I had 1 for not taking the classes, 1 for not paying the fines, and 1 for not doing something with the DMV. So I had 9 total counts of violation of probation. So they asked for 9 months minimum. But as I said, I was pre-law, and this is in the same county I went to college in. So when they pull me out there in chains, guess who's working for the state prosecutors? Everyone I was in the pre-law society with.
Oh, wow.
Because it takes 3 years to get to law school. And a lot of people, when they finish law school, go to work for the state because it's the easiest job to get because it pays shit and it gives you a ton of experience. So I walked out and there was 4 people that I literally was in the pre-law society with at FAU, like, Tasseff? And I was like, hey guys, different life paths. So they had to recuse themselves, but they were all character witnesses. And the judge was like, listen, I'm not going to let you walk. That's ridiculous. But also, I'm not going to give you 9 months. He said, we'll meet in the middle. He gave me 4.5.
And then you went to jail for 4.5 months.
Yeah. And it's I say this all the time. It's as an anxious person, it was the most relief I had felt from my anxiety because, and we talked about this before, but because when the door slams shut behind you, that's it. There is no paying rent. There is no cell phone bill. There is no credit card bill. Your life is going to be totally fucked when you get out. But for that 4.5 months, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And it was actually kind of a relief for someone whose brain operates on such like a freak out level. And so it was an interesting time. There's a lot of fights. You have to fight as soon as you get there. It sucks. You don't have to win. You just have to fight. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to win, but you have to make an effort or else they're just going to steal all your shit. Your trays. We call them trays. That's how you get your food. But yeah, so I did that. And then, you make a couple people laugh, you tell a couple jokes, and now all of a sudden you're just one of the guys. And then when I got released, every other time, I got arrested 3 other times after that. Every other time it was just like, let's go, hurry it up, book me. Let's figure this out. Come on. And finally my last DUI that I got, I called my sister, my older sister, and I was like, listen, because this was after rehab and everything, I relapsed and all that. And I was like, I am trying to turn my life around. You know this. I have a job. I don't want to lose this job. Can you bail me out? And she did, but a hurricane was coming, so they still held me for 6 days. And that was the last time I spent any time incarcerated. 2017, September.
So
September 19th, 2017.
Oh, okay. We're very close because I got sober in 2016. So
Oh, really?
We could have had a nice time. Well, a nice time for us in that we were like being lunatics together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd be like the main guy and I'd be like his sidekick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell him, Brennan. You know what I mean?
Or no, actually, from my experience, you'd be the guy starting the fight and then be like, hey, Brennan, get over here and handle this for me.
Oh, no. I wish I...
Especially because you love going in on people.
Dude, I wish I had the...
But a 6'1", 230-pound security blanket standing behind you.
That would have been real nice, Brennan. But honestly, when I would get drunk, I'd get beer muscles, which do not translate to real muscles.
They don't.
We may have been in the same amount of fights, but I feel like our win-loss records are different.
I lost a lot. I lose a lot of fights. Well, I say it in present tense. I lost a lot of fights. It's very hard to win. I remember... This is a fun story you might like. Speaking of low, all my stories are lows. You said highs and lows. It's all lows.
Well, we're the high right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we're two nice boys having a good time.
Yeah, I live in New York City pursuing a dream. So we both do. So you can't get higher than that. But yeah, I remember one time, speaking of beer muscles, I only drank liquor. That was my thing. I hated beer. I hated wine. And I would drink the cheapest liquor over the nicest wine because I was just like, no, I want to get there now.
Yeah.
Kyle Kinane, shout out. A very funny comedian, has a great bit about it where he's like, drinking beer is like driving like moderately down the interstate. And you're like, oh, there's my exit. Drinking liquor is like taking a rocket ship to get to where you want to go. You might overshoot it, but you're getting there a lot faster. But I remember this, I was 19, I want to say. This was one of the times, 19, 20 maybe. I remember I was underage. This was that summer before I went away to college, that time before I went away to college. And like I said, we were ripping Randy's. We were getting after it. And I remember I was at a bar. It's called Crook's Den in Daytona. It's not there anymore. Fucking good riddance, burned down. But there's this guy, I went with my twin sister because, again, like I said, we had become really close. It was weird because we went from not talking to being super close. So we're at this bar and she was popular. So she was there. She has a bunch of friends. A bunch of them are like super hot. I'm like 18 years old at this point. And this guy kept flirting with her. And my sister like gets after it too. Like at the time, she's now doesn't drink anymore. But at the time she could get after it too. And you know those people when they drink, they like have no fear of anything. Like nowadays, I see drunk people walking in New York and I'm like, how are you alone right now? Like, are you not terrified? So me and my sister were kind of like that. Like we'd get drunk and be like, fuck it. So this guy kept flirting with her the whole night and she's drunk being like yelling her phone number out at the top of her lungs. So we get outside and she's still flirting and she's doing all this shit. And I'm like, Hannah, stop, like chill. And the guy goes to get into his car with it. So it's come to find out later, his sister is driving. This guy's sister is driving. And then it's him in the front seat and then two of his buddies in the back seat. And he goes to get in the car. And as he's getting in the car, he's like, hey man, I'm a really nice guy. I don't understand. Like tattoos up the neck, real Machine Gun Kelly vibes. Mm. And this was 20 years ago. And I'm like, fuck this, just like I am now. And as he's getting into the car, he goes, I'm a really nice guy. And I said, I don't think so, man. And he shuts the door. And as he's rolling up the window, he goes, well then fuck you, Frosted Flake. And I turned and I went, I can't hear you. And I slammed my head into his window and shattered it.
Oh.
Yeah, you buried the lead. He was rolling up his window and went, well, then fuck you, Frosted Flake, thinking that the window would protect him. Uh-huh. And I took my head and I went, I can't hear you. And I went, boom, and shattered it. That's probably another concussion.
Yikes, dude.
But I was hammered. So I stood up unconscious. I don't know if anyone's been knocked out standing up, but I stood up unconscious. And he gets out of the car and he's like, oh no, hell no. His sister, well, again, I learned later it's his sister, is driving. She's screaming like, what the fuck? My car. What the fuck is wrong with you? And then the two other guys get out. So now it's 3-on-1.
Oh, geez.
And I just shattered this guy's window. You think they'd like speed off. Like this guy's a psycho.
Yeah, yeah.
And I sober up a little bit cognizantly in the moment. I think I'm not a fighter. I lose fights all the time. I'm about to get my ass kicked, but I go, maybe I can turn this. Maybe I can make them think they don't want any part of this.
Right.
And I'm only 18. I don't have the experience that I have from jail and all this kind of stuff. So I start punching myself in the face like, do you really want to do this? I'm fucking crazy. I'm crazy. You really think this is a good idea? I'm crazy. Like doing all this typical like Brennan Tasseff stuff. And they did. They called my bluff and they wanted to do it. So they close in on me. I think I play football. So I form tackle the one guy, the MGK guy. I form tackle him, slam him into the ground. But when I do that, his two buddies just start kicking me.
Right.
And kicking me and kicking me and So I army crawl back to the bar because we have friends in the bar. And one of my buddies who's in the bar is friends with a bunch of like club bouncers. He's a little bit older. And I open the door. And I might be misremembering because we always misremember trauma in our brains. But the way I see it in my head, it seems crystal clear. I remember opening the door, my older buddy catching eyes with me, and I just went, I'm sorry, it was my sister. And then I get hit in the back of the head and fall over. And him and all these bouncer dudes yoke these dudes up, beat the piss out of them. And then I kind of come to, and the bar manager, who hates me, still hates me to this day, he looks at me and he goes, what the fuck? And I kept going, it's my sister, it's my sister, it's my sister. And he goes, my older buddy comes up and he shakes me. He goes, Brennan, get the fuck out of here. Go through the back. Straight GTA'd it, man. Went out the back door, hopped a fence, stood behind one of those big electrical green generators, and you just saw the cops going up and down the street in their cars. You see the flashing blue and reds, and you see like that big light like hitting all sorts. And I'm just sitting behind this green generator staring at a wall, and like the alley's behind me, and I can just see the lights on the walls going back and forth and back and forth. And I waited until that all kind of died down, stumbled over to my buddy's business because it was like a block away. And that was we just never talked about it again. But I remember my twin sister screaming, you ruin everything. Like this whole.
You're like, I was defending your honor.
That's literally what I turn it into a bit on stage. That's literally what I say. I go,
You're welcome.
I was defending your honor. But like, that's the kind of shit. And it's so funny because none of that stuff I correlated with maybe I drink too much. I correlated all that with I don't take any shit anymore.
Right.
I used to get beat up in high school by my own teammates. The people who are supposed to protect you, the people you're supposed to be a family with, used to kick the shit out of me. My ex-stepdad used to beat the shit out. Like I was so run down in my head where I was like, I don't take shit anymore. So when I never correlated it with drinking, which is so bananas.
Yeah.
Because now being sober for so long, it's like, oh no, it's because you're a drunk asshole.
Yeah.
You are your ex-stepdad. You are that person. And so it's so weird because the way I resolve conflict now is so different than I did back then.
Yeah. Is that something that like guides your behavior now? Because I imagine, because I get living in New York City, dealing with people all the time, I get that thing of like, is someone fucking with me right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel
It's a typical conversation with you, by the way. Is he fucking with me right now?
But yeah, it's interesting. So how do you deal with the feeling that someone is like disrespecting you now? Because I imagine it's not shattering their car window with your.
No, it's not that anymore. I've been fortunate. I think, people always say, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell them? And for me, it's nothing, because my experiences in life, given, I have undiagnosed CTE and all this kind of like trauma and all this kind of, but I still wouldn't change any of that because all of that has led me to be in this room almost 7 years sober, talking with you about all these experiences. Like I made it through the other side. I have plenty of friends, I'm sure you do too, that didn't make it. They're either in jail or dead. And so I'm fortunate enough to where I have all that experience now. And I think I wear that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like a lot of times when I walk around, like on the subway, I've been accosted on the subway, like anybody, like people getting in my face, but nobody ever gets too close. And I am diagnosed bipolar 2. I didn't learn that till I was in rehab at 22.
Okay.
But yeah, they looked at my all my medical records and stuff. And then after like a month and a half of being in rehab, you see real doctors in rehab, at least the one I went to. And they go, and they said it so nonchalantly, like we talked about on my show, but they were just kind of like, yeah, this, that. And yeah, bipolar 2, we're going to officially diagnose you with that. So anyway, and I was like, wait, what? So I still have that switch.
Mhm.
I can still flip it. It happens sometimes, like at work. I work in a very swanky steakhouse. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, and I've done this before. I'm not proud of it, but like I'll slam a wine glass like on the counter and it'll shatter because I'm just so like worked up. So it's still in there. It's still in there. But now, again, I don't get accosted as often as I think other people do because of my demeanor, because of the way I carry myself. And also, I know to treat other people with respect. And that's just something I was taught as a kid. But I don't just ignore, like, if the person's like talking to themselves and being loud, yeah, I'll ignore them. But like if someone's just asking for money, I look them in the eye and I go, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't just treat them like they're not there, which I think also has a lot to do with like the way of like treating other people is the way that they treat you. So I don't really get into a lot of altercations. It's happened twice in New York. One time this guy was just off his rocker on the subway. And in my head now, it's a lot calmer. Like he's yelling in my face and I go, if he gets a half inch closer, I'm going to put my forehead into the bridge of his nose. It's always important to go after the nose because the sinuses will react. Their eyes get watery. They can't see anymore.
He's only talking about in a self-defense.
Yeah, obviously in a self-defense manner.
Or if you're really pissed off.
So it's important to go for the nose. The nose is the most important thing to strike at. And you got to go hard and you got to go fast. And that's just obviously 100% just self-defense, but it's New York City, just like anywhere else. People in any environment, New York or fucking Louisiana or Indiana or Iowa, there are people who don't give a fuck and they will hurt you or kill you. So you have to keep that in the back of your head. I used to be one. I put my head through a guy's window. Like I used to be one of those guys. So I'm aware of what people are capable of. But he didn't get closer. It was like, if he gets a little closer, I'm going to have to react because he was like about to get violent. And then he kind of looked, I was looking, I never broke eye contact. And I think he knew like that, I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked away. And then one other time on the subway with my ex-girlfriend, this guy was hammered and like clearly homeless, looked like he was hammered, and got on, and we were sitting on the bench. And he literally, his like pants were down around his thighs. So his like butt was out and everything. And he sat down and we were like, whoa. And so as we were getting up to like move, he like slid down the bench, like, and my girlfriend's in the middle. So I'm on the edge. So he slides into her and dude, I didn't even know it was still in there like that. I shot up, pushed him, like slammed him against the other side of the bench. And I was like, yo, buddy, you good? And that's when I could tell he was like, didn't know what was happening because he looked up and disoriented. He was like, yeah. And I was like, you know, babe, get up. Like we're moving. And I just held him there. And those are the only two times where I've had to like react.
Mm-hmm.
But normally I'm the like silliest goose in the flock.
I love being a silly goose.
I love it, man. I'm always goofing around. I'm always being, but you know, I say it all the time. If it comes to me and mine, like, it's a great line from the movie Looper. What are you willing to sacrifice for what's yours? Like, if you come in between me and like my girlfriend, my friends, my family,
Your podcast guest?
my podcast guest, well, you're a friend. You're a friend of the show. But like, I take those relationships very seriously. And I'm not the kind of guy who's like going to call people all the time. I might not see you again for another 6 months. But when I see you, I'm going to be like, yo, dude, Bobby, like, what's up? And that's just how I'm wired. So like, again, I'm a very calm, silly goose, the silliest goose you'll ever meet. But if I get pushed to it, I can still find him.
What is bipolar 2?
So bipolar 2 is, bipolar 1 is something you're born with, much like diabetes.
Okay.
Bipolar 2 is something that develops over time because of a chemical imbalance in your brain.
Okay.
So it's manic episodes, it's wild mood swings, self-medication through drugs and alcohol, all the telltale signs of like, you have an issue. And so for a long time, they had me on like lithium and different things like that, antipsychotics, which I still feel cool saying antipsychotics, but
it is pretty metal. As far as medications go, antipsychotic is the most metal one.
But it turns you into a zombie. You zonk out. And I can't, as a creative, I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also that's why I'm so good at my job serving. Like I'm very good at it, but it's because of that ability to read people, read the room. The same, it's translatable to comedy as well. being able to read the room, read people, kind of figure out. And I'm a pretty gregarious guy. Like I'm a pretty charismatic guy. And it took all that from me. So I spoke to my doctors and I was like, hey, when I got sober this last time, I was like, hey, I'm going off everything, all of it. And they were like, well, we don't advise that. And I go, listen, I understand that, but this stuff messes me up. It's tramadol, same thing. Triazidol, it all does the same kind of shit. And I was like, I just don't want to take this anymore. I'm not going to take it. Because again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There's what you're told, and then there's what you can do. And people always get they're like, I'm not supposed to. I go, I understand that, but there's all, like when we're kids and you go smoke weed, it's like, this is illegal, but we're still going to do it. Like there's different levels to like what you're told and then what is possible. So they go, you can't get off your medication. And I go, well, I'm going to stop taking it. I would like to do it under your advice as my doctor. And so they gave me a routine. Routine's a big part of it. But the shitty thing about it is like, I still go into manic episodes. Like I'll wake up, like I'll fall asleep on the couch, wake up at like 11:30 at night and be like, I need to clean my entire apartment right now because that's what has to get done. Or like I'll get on the subway and go to the Brooklyn Bridge just to walk back and forth, just to do it because like my brain will start spiraling. And I meditate a lot. I pray every morning. That's more of a super secret program thing. I don't drink. I don't self-medicate anymore. And when I feel the big, like the big surges coming on, everyone in my life is aware of it. My bosses at work are very aware. My girlfriend is very aware. So whenever I feel any kind of like thing happening, I'll excuse myself from the situation. I've gotten a lot better about that. Again, it doesn't happen all the time, but you know, I've gotten worked up before and called someone useless at work before or something like that. But for the most part, I have been able to contain it very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very well, I guess. So it's been good. Plus, it's opens you up to like a whole different world of experience, being able to like be in the moment, always in the moment versus being like zonked out on medication, which, hey, if that's your bag, no shame. Like some people need it. My people like my brother need it. But if like for me, like everything just is a lot better when I'm not on it. But I'm sure a lot of people say that. I'm sure a lot of people wandering the subways are like, life is just better when I'm not on the pills.
Yeah, it's better for you, but we're all trying to take the subway with you right now.
But I've been able to get through it, you know. I've got a really good job. I do comedy, got the podcast. Like everything's working out.
Yeah. So I want to close talking about your family because you mentioned your sister a couple times.
Yeah.
You are a twin.
Yes.
What is that like?
It's fun. I have a twin sister, love her to death. Shout out Hannah. She's super cool. She and I say this on my one man show, and I've talked to her about it, so she's cool with me saying it. But growing up, I have an older sister as well who's also very popular. And my older brother was like the king of the castle. Like he had the nickname Massive Tasseff in high school. He was like a 3-sport athlete, not a big guy, but like and again, smartest person in any room he's ever been in, started partying at a young age. So like, my siblings are way cooler than I am, which is ironic now because like I do a job that everyone thinks is so cool. And I'm like, nah, they're way cooler than me, dude. But yeah, being a twin was weird in the sense that you share milestones together. I have a bit where I say like, everyone's like, oh, that must be awesome to be a twin. It's like, no, we have to split everything because our birthdays aren't the same day. But that's not entirely true. My parents always did a real good job of like trying to make sure that we got our own thing. But it is interesting going through major milestones like 16, 18, 21, 30 with someone that you're connected to. It is interesting because growing up, she would get after it in like high school and stuff and got into a bit of trouble here and there. You know, just the regular run of the mill kind of stuff. But like now looking back on it at 36, but I remember when we turned 30, one of the things that put me in the hospital was how I felt like I had failed myself because now my sister had grown up. She did exactly what the layout is. You know, had fun in high school, maybe got into a little bit of trouble, maybe a little more than most, but like still like rebounded, went to school, finished college, got married, owns a home, has 2 beautiful children, loves her life, got into working out. Now she does baby boot camps and all this kind of stuff. I went the other way. Like I was Arrested Development. I started drinking at 17, stayed the same 17-year-old kid. And I remember being 30 Like, this is a huge milestone. You're no longer in your 20s. And I remember sitting on my couch after work with no intention of drinking, thinking about how I basically failed as a person. Like, law school was gone. My ex-fiance gone. Like, comedy, I'm not doing it anymore because I'd get on stage and like run the light and like be an asshole. So I stopped getting on stage when I was drinking. All that's gone. And I remember thinking about my twin and just like how proud of her I was that she, you know, when she's a kid, everyone's like, she's kind of a screw up. She's kind of getting into a little bit of trouble. You know, she likes to party. She likes to hang out with her friends. And now she had it. What everyone dreams is the American dream. She has it and still to this day has it. And I was like, man, I really misplayed this whole situation. But yeah, it's awesome. We have, and the other cool thing too is like, because she has health insurance and I don't, I can have her go to the doctor because we have the same genetic makeup. We're not identical, but we still have enough of the same genetics in us where
I love the wholesome, nice, followed by the practical.
Yeah.
I could do medical scams too.
yeah. Well, I was like, hey, Hannah, go to the doctor. Tell him that your butt's bleeding. She's like,
tell him you're having problems with your testicles.
Yeah. God, that was a low. I had to have surgery on my testicles.
You had surgery on your testicles?
Yeah, I used to get ball tapped a lot in high school. Like I said, I was bullied a lot.
So much so that it infected them?
So I had a tear in a hydrocele, which is just a seal that's around your testicles. My left testicle, there was a tear in it, almost microscopic tear, but water would slowly leak in.
Wow.
So by the time I was 31, I had a testicle about yay big. Yeah.
For those just listening, the size of a grapefruit?
700, or a wine bottle is 750 milliliters. They took out 650 milliliters of fluid. So a little smaller than a wine bottle.
Oh.
Yeah, but my ex,
not as good, I guess. Doesn't taste as good.
No, my ex who I moved to New York with, when we first started dating, she was like, you have to go to the doctor. And at the time, luckily I did have health insurance through one of the companies, the restaurants I was working for. And so I was like, fine. Like, I guess eventually I was going to have to get this looked at, because it started where in college, it was a funny joke where it's like, Brennan's just got big balls. And then after college, like my ex-fiance was like, yeah, it's like a lot bigger than the other one. And then, you know, cause it was a slow leak. So over years and years and years, and I had gotten it looked at, like when I was in college and I was still on my dad's insurance, I went to the hospital because I thought it could have been cancer. And they're like, no, they literally did an ultrasound and they're like, there's nothing in there because it was just water. Yeah, so I ended up getting surgery on my testicles. So when I told my twin sister to go into the doctor to ask about her testicles, that was the no-go. That was the final straw.
Yeah.
Because she was like, Brennan, I don't have any testicles. I go, you do, but they're on the inside.
Oh, man. Dude, the nut tapping.
I hate it.
I don't know if that's, I think now children and teenagers bully each other on the internet.
Yeah.
So they don't have time to hit each other in the testicles. But that was a big thing when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah.
To hit people. I was the only one where I was like, no, don't ever do that to me again.
Oh, really?
You know, and I'm a petite gentleman, but enough people would do that where I would just like grab them by the collar and shove them against the locker.
Yeah.
Which is
which I didn't learn until college, where you have to stand up for yourself.
Dude, it comes from, you know, being leprechaun-esque.
Yeah.
You learn that you sort of have to.
Yeah.
I was getting bullied in middle school, and I would just punch people immediately. So immediately, as soon as I learned they were laughing at me instead of with me, I would just hit them as hard as I can.
So this is something, I know we got to wrap up, but this is something I find fascinating. Again, this goes back to what you are told and then what a person is capable of. Because this happens all the time when like someone will talk, like this happened literally yesterday at a mic. A comic who I don't really know was on stage and he had said something about Florida. So I clapped and he was like, shut the fuck up. And I go, excuse me? He goes, what are you from Florida or something? I said, yeah, Daytona. He goes, fuck Daytona. I went, fuck you. Like we're at a mic, but you don't understand. Like I know I'm not supposed to rush the stage, but I will fucking, Brennan Tasseff will come out and have a party right now. You want to get hostile. Like once you stop doing bits and you're getting hostile, again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I can flip it. I don't want to. I haven't had to, but I can. So do you think that with the online bullying and how the freedom that people have to kind of say whatever they want online and there's no repercussions? Because when we were in school, you just pointed it out, people got hit. Like you'd get hit in the face. Do you think that is leading to a lot of people saying like wild shit now? because I have a theory, because I talk to my girlfriend a lot and she works in the school system. So she's like around these young kids and some of them are just awful because there's no consequences.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, if I was like that as a kid, either I'd get hit by my parents or I'd get hit by like another kid. But like they've not completely, only a Sith deals in absolutes, but they've gotten a lot of that out of the system now. Do you think that's detrimental to the way people treat each other in the long run? Or do you think that's good?
Brendan, I think that's a question I will have to answer when you come back on.
All right.
Because we have reached our time.
Little cliffhanger.
But remind the folks where they can find you.
Oh, at Brennan T Comedy on all social media. BrennanTComedy.com is the website. I'm touring in the summer with my good buddy Matt Fulcher on The Full Charge. We'll be in Connecticut, Boston. We're going to do some dates in New York, East Coast run. So check out the website, BrennanTComedy.com. And check out my other podcast, Ex Drinking Buddy. I have a guest on every week to talk about their best and worst drinking, drug, party, and getting in trouble stories.
And remember, folks, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I'm just plain Night Owls. You know I love you.
Thank you.